For the longest time, I believed that raising a child with love, sacrifice, and endless forgiveness would guarantee at least one thing in return: respect. But I was wrong. Painfully, dangerously wrong. Because just a few months ago, my own son, Kingsley, looked me dead in the eye. No shame, no hesitation, no remorse, and demanded that I cover his wife Felicia's $500,000 debt. Not asked. Not pleaded. Not explained. Demanded. As if I were nothing but a walking bank account. As if the decades I spent struggling to raise him meant nothing. As if my entire life savings existed for him to burn. I remember standing there, numb, listening to him justify it, saying, "Mom, Felicia made a mistake. You have money. Just pay the $500,000. It's your responsibility as our mother." He didn't even blink. And the worst part? The debt wasn't for something noble. Not for school. Not for medical care. Not for the children, Liam and Emily. No. Felicia's debt came from a secret life she thought she could hide forever. Until it all collapsed. Right onto my shoulders. I wish I could tell you I said something brave that day. But I didn't. The shock swallowed my voice. The betrayal stole my strength. And so, I did the only thing a broken mother could do. I vanished. Without a word. Without a trace. Without giving them a single clue where I'd gone. But don't worry. I didn't disappear because I was defeated. I disappeared because I needed time to prepare a lesson they would never recover from. A lesson they would remember for the rest of their lives, every time they looked in the mirror. And that is the story I'm about to tell you. Before I continue, if you're a parent watching this, and you never want to experience the kind of betrayal I did, hit that subscribe button. If you don't, I honestly fear you're silently accepting the same fate I walked into. A fate where your own children believe you exist only to be used, drained, and discarded. Don't let that be your future. Subscribe now. Before everything fell apart. Before the betrayal, the debt, the threats, and the disappearance. My life was simple. Quiet. Predictable in the most comforting way. Most mornings, I sat by my small garden window with a cup of ginger tea, listening to the soft laughter of my grandchildren, Liam and Emily, echoing from across the yard. They visited me almost every weekend back then. Liam, bright, curious, always building something. Emily, gentle, observant, with those big round eyes that saw straight into my soul. They would run into my little home yelling, "Grandma, we're here." And every time, my heart felt 10 years younger. Those moments, those tiny, innocent voices, they were the only thing that reminded me life still held warmth. Kingsley, their father, my only child, visited less often. But when he did, I held on to those visits like fragile glass, hoping each time that maybe our relationship would soften again, maybe the distance between us would fade. He wasn't cruel back then. Just unreachable. Always distracted. Always carrying some weight he wouldn't name. But I told myself, he's grown now. He's busy. He still loves me in his own way. I held hope the way only a mother can, stubbornly, blindly, desperately. I didn't know then that the storm had already begun forming behind me. It started quietly, like small cracks in a wall you don't notice until the whole thing collapses. During one visit, I saw a brand new luxury handbag on Felicia's arm, the kind that cost more than my monthly pension. She brushed it off with a laugh. Oh, this? It was on sale. But the stitching glittered. The logo shone. And something about the way Kingsley stiffened told me it wasn't just a bag. A week later, the children arrived wearing matching limited edition sneakers. I complimented them, but when Emily innocently said, "Auntie Fell brought them," Daddy said not to tell Grandma. Kingsley shot her a sharp glare. I pretended not to notice. But the silence that followed? It felt heavy. Dangerous. Then came the phone calls. Felicia stepping outside, lowering her voice, pacing back and forth behind the carport. I could only hear fragments. I said I'd get it. No, don't call again. Just give me time. The words were short. Panicked. Cornered. I asked Kingsley one evening as he helped me fix a loose cabinet hinge. Is everything okay? You seem tense lately. His hand froze mid-turn. Then he forced a smile so tight it looked painful. Everything's fine, Mom. Please, don't worry. But you can't raise a child and not know when he's lying. And every time money came up, even in small talk, he would flinch. Glance at Felicia. Lower his voice. Change the subject. The signs were there. The warnings whispered around me. The shadows stretched quietly across my once peaceful world. But I didn't understand the truth yet. I didn't know the monster climbing toward my door. That $500,000 monster. With my son holding it by the hand. It happened on a Wednesday. One of those ordinary days where nothing feels wrong until everything does. I was in the kitchen stirring a pot of vegetable soup when I heard a harsh knock at the door. Not a gentle knock. Not a visitor's knock. A summons. I dried my hands and opened the door, and there they stood. Felicia, stiff posture, arms crossed, chin high. And Kingsley, behind her, shoulders slumped, eyes glued to the ground. They didn't even greet me. Felicia walked in first, brushing past me as if I were the maid she forgot to fire. Kingsley followed, hands fidgeting, refusing to meet my eyes. Is everything all right? I asked softly. Felicia sat down on my sofa like she owned it. She didn't smile. She didn't blink. She didn't breathe kindness. Let's get straight to the point, she said. Her tone cut through the air like a blade. Kingsley hovered behind her, shrinking into himself. As though he wasn't a grown man with 2 children, but a frightened schoolboy standing beside the strict headmistress. Something in my chest tightened. Something told me this wasn't just a conversation. This was an ambush. Felicia crossed her legs, tossed her hair back, and delivered the sentence that shattered the quiet life I knew. We need you, she said plainly. To take responsibility for our debt. I blinked slowly, unsure if I heard her right. Our what? Our debt, she repeated. It's only $500,000. Only. The word echoed in my skull like a cruel joke. I turned to Kingsley, hoping, praying, he would correct her, soften the blow, explain something, anything. But he didn't. Instead, he nodded. A rehearsed nod. A nod that told me they practiced this speech in the car before coming. Yes, Mom, he said quietly. It's just something we need your help with. Just $500,000. My hands trembled on my lap. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. I felt the room tilt. All I could whisper was, Kingsley, how? Why? What happened? But Felicia lifted her hand, silencing me like a child. We don't need to get into details, Maugre. We just need you to step up. Step up. As though raising their children, paying their bills in secret, and supporting them for years wasn't stepping up. As though I existed for this moment. For their relief. Not mine. And then it began. The guilt. The manipulation. The cruelty behind the entitlement. Felicia leaned forward, her eyes cold, voice sharp. You're old, Maugre. What else were you planning to use your money for? You don't travel. You don't spend. You live in this tiny house. What exactly are you saving it for? Her words hit like stones. Kingsley stood there, silent, shrinking, sweating. But when Felicia nudged his arm, signaling him to speak, he did. He swallowed hard and said, You owe us, Mom, we're your family. Oh. I raised him alone. Worked 3 jobs. Struggled through storms he never even knew happened. Fed him, clothed him, protected him. And now I owed him? My throat tightened. My vision blurred. I felt my heart break. Not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, invisible way that hurts far worse. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shout. I wanted to stand up for myself. But I sat there in silence, too stunned to breathe. Too shattered to speak. Because in that moment, I realized something devastating. My son didn't see me as a mother anymore. He saw me as money. A solution. A resource. A tool. And once he was done using me, he would throw me away. If you've ever been guilt-tripped, ever been manipulated, ever been made to feel small by someone you love, hit that subscribe button. Tell us your own experience in the comments. We'll love to learn from your story. After the confrontation, I couldn't sleep. Every corner of my small home seemed to whisper the same question. How did this happen? How did they think they could demand $500,000 from me? I decided to investigate quietly. No confrontations. No rash decisions. Just me and the truth. What I discovered made my chest tighten. Felicia had been building this financial trap for years. At first, I thought it was simple overspending. Then I found out. Loans taken under fake business names. Companies I'd never heard of, debts I didn't know existed. Investment platforms that were more like gambling dens. Thousands of dollars disappearing in a haze of high-risk promises. Lavish purchases. Designer bags, expensive watches, private lessons for hobbies I didn't even recognize. A hidden past of financial irresponsibility. Felicia had been involved in questionable ventures before meeting Kingsley, yet she acted like my money was hers for the taking. Every page I uncovered was a knife in my heart. Every number, a reminder of how easily a life can be controlled by deceit. As I sifted through documents, my mind wandered. To the boy I once knew. Kingsley had been confident once. Ambitious. Caring. I watched him change gradually. He became dependent. He became fearful. He became submissive. Felicia's influence over him was quiet but unrelenting. She whispered doubt into his ears, questioned his judgment, made him feel powerless unless I intervened. A man I raised to be strong and wise, reduced to someone who obeyed, who bent, who justified wrongdoing, because love had been replaced by fear. And then, the cruelest part hit me. Kingsley had known. About the debt. About every lie. About the financial spiral. For over a year, He kept it from me. He watched silently as the web of deceit grew. He let Felicia manipulate the truth, and only now, when the demand became unavoidable, did he step forward, rehearsed words on his lips, guilt on his face. I felt my heart shatter all over again. This wasn't just financial abuse. This was emotional betrayal. This was a son I raised turning into the man I never recognized. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just about money. It was about control. It was about fear. It was about them proving they could use me and get away with it. And I would not let them. The house was silent, except for the hum of the night outside my window. I sat alone at the kitchen table, the half-empty cup of tea growing cold in my hands. Pay it? Or not pay it? The words twisted in my mind, each one heavier than the last. I thought of the years I had spent raising Kingsley alone. Every sleepless night, every scraped knee, every tear I had wiped away, was it all leading to this? Did I fail him as a mother? Did my love, my protection, somehow teach him to manipulate instead of respect? I ran my fingers over the faded photograph on the table. Kingsley as a boy, smiling, his small hand in mine. How did it go so wrong? A memory flashed, sudden and vivid. Kingsley, no more than 8, holding a scraped knee and looking up at me with big brown eyes. I promise, Mama, he had said, I'll never take advantage of you. I'll never make you feel like this. The words had been sincere then. And yet, here he was now, demanding $500,000, not asking, demanding. The contrast was almost unbearable. I felt anger rise alongside a deep, gut-wrenching sorrow. And then, the final push came. A message on my phone from Felicia, sharp and cold. You have 48 hours to decide. Don't make us force your hand. I stared at it. My hands trembled. My chest ached. This was no longer just a test of finances. This was a test of my courage, my boundaries, my very soul. I realized then I had 2 choices. Submit and let them win, or stand firm and reclaim my life, no matter the cost. My heart pounded, a mix of fear and determination. It was time to decide, not just about the debt, but about who I was willing to be from this moment on. If you think no parent deserves this kind of betrayal, hit that subscribe button right now. If you don't, maybe you believe what they did to me was justified, go ahead, leave a comment and explain why you'd let someone use your love like that. The first light of dawn crept across the horizon as I quietly packed a small suitcase. I didn't take much, just essentials, my savings tucked safely in a hidden envelope, and a few cherished mementos of a life I still wanted to hold on to. The house was silent. Liam and Emily were still asleep, oblivious to the storm swirling above their heads. I paused for a moment, looking at their little sleeping faces, my heart breaking. But I knew, if I stayed, I would be consumed. I left without a word. No goodbyes, no explanations, just the knowledge that this was not abandonment. This was survival. The journey was long. Hours of driving through winding country roads, leaving behind familiar streets, familiar smells, familiar danger. Eventually, I arrived at a quiet town I hadn't visited since my youth. Its streets were small, its people kind, its pace slow. Auntie Rosalind greeted me at her doorstep, her arms open wide. Ma Gray. My dear, you look like you've carried the weight of the world on your shoulders. I have, I whispered, tears welling in my eyes. And now, I need to lay it down, at least for a little while. Next, I met Mr. Demiso, a retired accountant with the patience of a saint. He listened as I recounted every detail, the debts, the threats, Kingsley and Felicia's cold manipulation. Maigret, he said calmly, they think fear is power. But knowledge is stronger than fear. You have rights, you have options. We'll make sure you understand them. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of control. Mr. Demusso's words echoed in my mind as I adopted my new life strategy: silence is defense, not defeat. I blocked every number. I deleted every email, every contact that connected me to them. I moved with intention, quietly, simply, learning to live day by day without fear of Felicia's demands or Kingsley's entitlement. I cooked my meals slowly, drank tea on the small balcony, and watched the town wake around me. I wrote in my journal every evening, mapping out how I would protect myself legally and emotionally. I reminded myself every day, disappearing was not cowardice. It was self-respect. It was reclaiming the life they tried to steal. Back home, the silence drove Kingsley and Felicia into a frenzy. His voice messages were frantic, demanding, and dripping with guilt manipulation. "Where are you, Mom? You can't do this. You promised. We need that money now." Felicia's texts were sharp, cold, and almost surgical in their cruelty. "You'll regret this. Legal action will come, and don't think you're untouchable." But she had no way to reach me. Every threat bounced into the void I had created. I allowed myself a small, victorious smile as I listened to their chaos from afar. For the first time, the power had shifted. It wasn't about revenge, it was about teaching them a lesson without stooping to their level. Days turned into weeks, and the news of Felicia and Kingsley's financial irresponsibility began to spread quietly through the old neighborhood. Debt collectors called incessantly, leaving messages that Felicia tried desperately to ignore. The glossy Instagram posts that once flaunted luxury handbags and designer shoes vanished overnight. Felicia's so-called influencer accounts dwindled to near empty followers as sponsorships pulled out, refusing to be associated with someone now exposed for fraud and debt. Kingsley, too, was crumbling. His once stable corporate job evaporated after his boss discovered he had misrepresented finances and borrowed from company accounts to cover personal debt. He had no savings, no fallback, and suddenly the entitled bravado he had wielded around Maigret seemed childish and hollow. I remained quiet, far away in my new town, sipping tea on Auntie Rosalind's porch. I didn't gloat, but I allowed myself a quiet satisfaction. They were learning, painfully, the consequences of actions they had thought would be invisible. The news trickled to me in fragments, always secondhand, always incomplete. One afternoon, Rosalind's phone rang while I was tending her garden. "It's someone from your old neighborhood," she whispered, glancing at me. "They asked about Felicia and Kingsley." Apparently, Felicia tried to open a new credit line, and the bank shut her down immediately. I felt a small spark of vindication, but then, a few days later, an email arrived from Liam, my grandson. His words were small, tender, and full of longing. "Grandma, I miss you. Mommy and Daddy fight a lot. I don't know what to do. Can you come home?" My stomach turned cold. The story I thought I was writing, the lesson they would never forget, was suddenly much more complicated. The pain in Liam's words was real, unfiltered. I could see him sitting alone in his room, confused, scared, missing the grandmother who had protected him once before. Emily, too, left a brief note tucked into Liam's email. "I miss your cookies. I miss when you read to us. I hope you're okay. Love, Emily." My heart ached. I sat on Rosalind's porch, staring at the horizon, the email open on my tablet. My own tears blurred the sunlight. It wasn't Felicia who was truly suffering, it was my grandchildren. Kingsley and Felicia's recklessness had consequences that rippled further than they ever imagined. They thought I would bear the weight alone, but the damage was already spreading. Liam's innocence, Emily's quiet longing, the way they missed me. It was a sharp reminder that sometimes the lessons we try to teach are best tempered with wisdom and care. I realized in that moment, teaching a lesson didn't mean leaving pain in its wake. I had to recalibrate. My actions needed to be precise, targeted, and protective, not vengeful. I called Auntie Rosalind, my voice firm but gentle. I need you to help me gather more information. Not for revenge, not for punishment, but to make sure the children are protected while Kingsley and Felicia face the consequences of their choices. Over the next few weeks, we worked quietly. I learned the exact scope of their debts, their financial maneuvers, and the legal loopholes Felicia had exploited. With Mr. Dumasso's advice, we ensured that I would remain untouchable legally while still monitoring the situation. Through subtle, indirect interventions, I began ensuring that Liam and Emily had stability. Friends in the neighborhood discreetly offered support, meals, and homework help. Banks and creditors were contacted to freeze accounts that could harm the children. Felicia and Kingsley remained exposed to the consequences of their actions, but the innocent, my grandchildren, would not bear the brunt. I realized something profound as I read another email from Liam that night. "Grandma, I hope you're safe. I hope we can see you soon. I love you." That love, untainted by greed, reminded me why I had vanished in the first place. Not for revenge. Not for control. But for protection. For the first time, I understood that power didn't lie in the money, in the threats, or in forcing someone to learn a lesson. Power lay in control of oneself, courage to step away, and love that shields the innocent. The sun was barely rising as I drove back into the town I had once called home. The streets were familiar, yet everything felt different. I wasn't returning to forgive, nor to placate. I was returning to protect. I didn't head to their house. Not yet. Instead, I went straight to child services, armed with the knowledge that the children, my beloved Liam and Emily, were the ones truly at risk. With Mr. Dumasso's guidance, I filled out reports, provided context about Felicia's financial recklessness, and explained how Kingsley had become complicit. Every word I spoke was calculated, factual, unemotional, because in situations like this, emotion can cloud judgment. From child services, I moved to a trusted lawyer. Mr. Dumasso had prepared me well. "You are not going to fight Kingsley or Felicia emotionally," he said. "You're going to document, protect, and leave them with no room to manipulate anyone again." Back at my temporary apartment, I methodically began documenting every piece of evidence I had gathered over the past months. Screenshots of Felicia's entitled messages, "You owe us. You'll pay, or we'll ruin everything." Voicemails of Kingsley panicking, begging, threatening, "Where are you? You can't just disappear." Debt histories showing missed payments, fraudulent loans, and hidden purchases. Texts and emails revealing lies and manipulations spanning years. Statements from neighbors and friends who had witnessed Felicia and Kingsley's recklessness. Each piece was carefully saved, categorized, and backed up in multiple secure locations. I wasn't doing this for revenge. I was doing this to ensure Liam and Emily had protection if things got worse. I realized how powerful knowledge and preparation could be, how it could level the playing field against entitlement and deceit. It was time to confront Kingsley, alone first, in a public, controlled environment. I chose a small cafe with discreet security cameras and neutral staff. He arrived 10 minutes late, slouched in his chair, face pale. As I walked in, he looked up and froze. "Mom," he whispered, almost ashamed. His voice cracked. I didn't answer immediately. I sat calmly, exuding the confidence I had cultivated in my weeks away. "We need to talk," I said softly. He lowered his head, unable to meet my eyes. Then, tears came. Real, raw tears. "I'm sorry," he sobbed. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I didn't know how to stop her. I should have told you. I'm so sorry, Mom. Before I could respond, the cafe door burst open. Felicia stormed in, heels clicking, a mixture of irritation and entitlement on her face. I don't know why you're meeting him here. This is ridiculous. I stayed calm, voice steady. Felicia, sit. I know everything. Her eyes widened, searching mine for a hint of weakness, but finding none. I know about the loans under fake names, I said. I know about the lavish purchases you tried to hide. I know about the manipulations, the lies, the messages pressuring me for money that was never mine to give. Kingsley flinched, guilt etched on his face. Felicia opened her mouth, then paused. She realized this wasn't a conversation she could control. I leaned forward, looking them both in the eye. I also know the suffering my grandchildren have endured because of your actions. And I will not let them pay for your mistakes. For a long moment, the cafe was silent except for the distant hum of morning traffic. Felicia's face hardened, but I could see fear behind the mask. Kingsley's shoulders slumped, defeated. I'm not here to yell, I continued, calm but resolute. I'm here to make one thing clear. Your choices have consequences. And the children will be safe. I will ensure it. Kingsley whispered, voice barely audible, I understand, Mom. I really do. Felicia's face flushed with anger, but I didn't flinch. I knew the real power wasn't in threats, it was in preparation, knowledge, and control. As I left the cafe that morning, I felt a quiet sense of victory. Not revenge. Not satisfaction. Control. Protection. Peace. The cafe had cleared out from the morning rush, leaving only a few scattered patrons and the soft hum of the espresso machine. I sat across from Kingsley and Felicia, my hands folded calmly on the table. For weeks, I had rehearsed this moment, not for revenge, but for clarity, for justice, and for protection. You tried to force me into carrying a burden you built through greed, I said, my voice steady, resonant with authority I hadn't felt in years. My lesson is simple. I will not be your escape. I will only be your example. Kingsley's eyes filled with shame, Felicia's with fury. I let the silence linger. Let them feel the weight of my resolve. I continued, you wanted me to pay for $500,000 of debt that is yours, not mine. You believed my love for you and the grandchildren could be exploited. It cannot. You underestimated me, and that was your first mistake. The words landed like a quiet thunderclap. You could almost hear the shift in the air, the invisible breaking of the control they thought they held over me. It wasn't enough to say no. I had to make sure they could never threaten me again. With Mr. Demisso's guidance, we filed legal documents that ensured my assets were untouchable. Bank accounts, property, investments, everything that I had worked for and saved over a lifetime was now legally protected. Kingsley tried to argue, his voice cracking with desperation. Mom, you can't do this. Felicia. I held up my hand. I can. And I will. The law is clear. The debt is yours. Not mine. And from this moment forward, your choices are your responsibility. Felicia's face twisted into rage, but the calm in my voice, the certainty in my actions, left her powerless. This wasn't about money. It was about ending a cycle of control, fear, and manipulation. Once the legal framework was secured, I focused on the children, Liam and Emily. They were the innocents in this chaos. I set up a trust for their education and future, making sure Kingsley and Felicia could never touch a single dollar. Letters were sent to the trustees with clear instructions. the children's needs first, their father and his wife second, if at all. Every step I took was deliberate. I wasn't only protecting the grandchildren financially, I was teaching them a lesson in boundaries, self-respect, and resilience. Through all this, I realized the most important inheritance I could leave them wasn't money, it was example. An example that no one, no matter how close, could use you for their selfish gain. We left the legal office and returned to the quiet streets of the town. Felicia's attempts to regain control had failed. Kingsley, for the first time, was truly confronted with the consequences of their actions. We met briefly at a neutral cafe, the same place where I had delivered my ultimatum. Kingsley's shoulders slumped, tears welled up in his eyes. I understand now, Mom. I see what I've done. I'm sorry. I really am. Felicia, on the other hand, screamed in fury, the sound cutting through the calm morning. You can't do this. You think you're better than me. I didn't flinch. I stood slowly, straightened my back, and walked away, each step deliberate, each one a statement of freedom and self-respect. As I passed through the sunlight outside, the weight of years of manipulation lifted from my shoulders. My dignity was intact. My peace was unbroken. And my grandchildren's future was secure. In that moment, I knew they had learned their lesson. Not through anger or humiliation, but through the quiet, unwavering resolve of someone who finally decided that love does not mean enabling destruction. Months had passed since the storm of betrayal, manipulation, and financial pressure had been resolved. I sat on the porch of my small, sunlit home, the breeze carrying the scent of jasmine and fresh morning air. The grandchildren's laughter echoed faintly from the nearby park. I turned to the camera, my hands resting on my lap, my voice calm but firm, trembling only slightly with the memory of what had passed. Love your children, but don't let them destroy you, I said slowly. Boundaries are not coldness, they are survival. Protect yourself before it's too late. Your love does not give anyone the right to control your life or your money. Stand firm. Stand proud. And teach the next generation that respect is earned, not demanded. I paused, letting the weight of those words sink in, imagining every parent watching, feeling the fear and recognition of what could happen if they failed to act. Over time, life found its gentle rhythm again. Liam and Emily, sensing the love and safety that surrounded them, reconnected fully with me. We baked cookies together, stitched embroidery on the balcony, and spent afternoons watching the waves crash along the shore. Their laughter healed spaces I didn't realize had been empty for years. Kingsley, humbled by the consequences of his actions and the clear boundaries I had set, began therapy. He struggled, stumbled, but for the first time, truly reflected on his behavior and its ripple effects. Felicia vanished from our lives, her entitlement and manipulation no longer tolerated. She left the house, the neighborhood, and our shared history behind, taking with her the lessons she had refused to learn, but not without leaving a reminder of why I had chosen strength, clarity, and self-respect over fear and guilt. I stood once more on the porch, sunlight warming my face. The road had been long, the betrayal bitter, but the victories were mine, not in revenge, but in freedom, dignity, and the power to choose my life on my own terms. Subscribe if you believe no parent should be manipulated like this. Don't wait until it happens to you. And if you refuse to subscribe, tell me in the comments why. I honestly want to understand your reason, and maybe your story will help someone else avoid the pain I endured.